Recently, footage from the front lines appeared on the internet showing Ukrainian drones striking a Gaz-69 truck along the entire front line. The loss of vehicles is spurring the rapid de-mechanization of the Russian army. Experts say that for the first time in 3 years of war, they saw the 1950 model of the Gaz-69 on the front lines. Forbes reports. The source writes that Putin's army attacked the Ukrainian Armed Forces positions in the Belogorovka area in a Gaz-69. The assault itself ended very badly for the Russian armed forces. The Gaz-69 model that came under attack was manufactured at the Molotov Plant in Moscow between 1952 and 1972. The truck itself is not covered with metal sheets, and only an anti-drone net is welded on top. It is known that the truck was attacked by drone operators of the Abwehr Gruppe from the 81st Brigade. Other vehicles that were going into the attack were also attacked. Several more Gaz-69 models were spotted among them. Military experts emphasize that it is very difficult for the enemy to cross the front line in armored vehicles, not to mention light transport. However, more and more enemy units are switching to such trucks, as the Kremlin is unable to compensate for its losses in armored vehicles. Despite maintaining an advantage along most of the front line, Russia's winter campaign has produced limited results, indicating that the situation in Ukraine is not dire, concluded Ukrainian analyst Tatarigami. This does not mean that better equipped or more successful Russian assault forces will not advance a short distance here or there. However, it does not mean that overall the Russian army in Ukraine is increasingly unprepared for a major offensive and unprepared to exploit any local breakthrough resulting from a successful offensive. The heavy losses of armored vehicles are forcing Russian troops to look for alternative ways to transport personnel during assaults. One of these improvised solutions is the use of civilian vehicles, mostly still of Soviet make. It is modified in an artisanal way. The roof and doors are cut out, anti-drone grills are welded on, and electronic warfare equipment is installed. There is no pity for such equipment. In fact, it is disposable. Its main task is to deliver infantry to the landing point. After that, the vehicles are usually abandoned. The aggressor country Russia is accumulating resources and increasing the number of drone attacks on Ukraine. Such actions by the Kremlin will gradually destroy the reputation of US President Donald Trump. This was stated by the advisor to the head of the President's office, Mikhailo Podolyak, in a comment to the RBK Ukraine. He noted that Trump declared his readiness to participate in negotiations and proposed his strategy for a peaceful settlement, but such attempts are neutralized by the actions of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, because the head of the Kremlin is trying to continue the military escalation. Everything that Trump says, that he is ready to negotiate, that he has proposed something, that his strategy is absolutely effective. Putin nullifies all of this, Podolyak notes. According to him, such actions by Russia cannot remain unanswered. Podolyak is convinced that the United States will eventually be forced to change its strategy towards Russia. In particular, the United States can implement the concept of tough coercion towards the Russian Federation, which will include significant sanctions and an increase in Ukraine's military capabilities so that it can strike the Russian Federation even more powerfully. Sooner or later, you have to come to a concrete understanding that you are being humiliated time after time. Russia is doing this exclusively. Russia is doing this deliberately. Putin is absolutely sincere in his efforts to force Trump, while still dragging out time to play the Russian game, but at the same time zeroing out his reputation. Podolyak emphasized. The advisor to the head of the president's office believes that Trump's patience may snap in the coming months. The psychological deadline for the US may come in mid to late May. By that time, everyone will understand that Putin is humiliating Trump. It's a matter of months. That is, by mid to late May, it will already be clear that this is not working, he emphasized. Podolyak predicted that after this, the US will either change its strategy towards the Russian Federation or will be forced to fully adapt to the Russian game. But the second option does not correspond at all to Trump's psychotype. Podolyak, responding to Russia's new offensive, emphasized that Moscow does not seek any ceasefire with Ukraine. Almost everything the aggressor country has is being invested in the war. In particular, it is buying soldiers and sending them to fight. According to the advisor to the head of the president's office, people who earn between $2,500 to $10,000 from killings will not be able to return to their homes, as they will never receive such wages there again. It is in their interest to continue the war. Therefore, I do not doubt that Russia will use this accumulated resource. Again, what resource? It's clear that the level of militarization, like the one at the start of the invasion, with armored vehicles, aviation, and multiple launch rocket systems, is no longer available in such quantities. But they have enough manpower and appropriate tools. They have plenty of drones, he added. They keep the enemy at gunpoint, destroying his equipment and manpower. These are the soldiers of the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems, Achilles. Their history began with volunteers who became drone pilots back in 2022, and today they are a full-fledged strike regiment as part of the ground forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, according to Glavored media outlet. The commander of the battalion of the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems Achilles, Osa, told how the warriors of the Unmanned Systems Achilles destroy the enemy at the front and conduct training for new fighters. The enemy is constantly attacking our positions. Previously, they carried out assaults in large mechanized columns. After we successfully destroyed these columns, the enemy changed tactics. Now they enter in infantry groups. One at a time, maximum 2 occupiers enter our positions, but we find them and effectively destroy them. The commander of the 2nd Battalion of the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems Achilles, Osa, said on the air of the telethon. The company commander, call sign Boxer, also told how one can get into the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems Achilles. We teach people as much as possible and share experience. We need people, but specifically motivated ones. I personally go to the training ground. A person can be taught everything in 3 weeks. We have an example, a girl named Maricia. She's 21 years old. Maricia has already had 3 combat missions and effectively destroys the enemy, says the company commander of the 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems Achilles, Boxer. The 429th Separate Regiment of Unmanned Systems Achilles carries out combat missions in 2 hot areas at once, in the areas of Kupiansk and Dvorechnaya, and is scaling up in parallel. Recently, fighters from the 429th Achilles Separate Unmanned Aerial Systems Regiment have shown how they destroyed 4 Russian Pantsir C-1 anti-aircraft missile and gun systems worth $56 million. On the 15th of March, the Achilles Regiment released the results of its work in Russia. These missions had been secret for some time. The video shows 4 Russian Pantsir S-1 air defense systems destroyed by the striking winged UAVs. Pantsir S-1 is a self-propelled anti-aircraft missile and gun system that provides close cover for civilian and military targets against airstrikes. One such system costs about $14 million, and the total cost of the destroyed military equipment is about $56 million.